Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the meeting of the ETSU Board of Trustees. The recently concluded spring semester gave our university community much to celebrate. One of our most outstanding achievements came from the Bill Gatton College of Pharmacy. This spring, our pharmacy students achieved a 97% first-time pass rate on the North American Pharmacist Licensure Examination, ranking number 2 in the nation for the pass rates and the highest in Tennessee. This accomplishment highlights the exceptional quality of education and training provided by our College of Pharmacy and demonstrates the dedication and hard work of our students and faculty. Also, since our most recent board meeting in February, ETSU's radio station, WETS-FM, launched a campaign celebrating its 50-year on air, a milestone that underscores the station's long-standing service to our community. Additionally, students from the ETSU College of Nursing achieved a remarkable milestone with a 98% pass rate on the NCLEX exam, showcasing their dedication and the quality of our nursing education program. Our university is also proud to announce that an ETSU student has earned the prestigious Truman Scholarship, a highly competitive national award. This achievement highlights the exceptional leadership and academic excellence of our student body. Furthermore, Ms. Missy Testerman, an ETSU alumna, an educator at Rogersville City Schools, was recently honored as the National Teacher of the Year. Ms. Testerman is yet another example of the outstanding impact ETSU graduates are making in their communities and serves as a testament to the long-standing impact of an ETSU education. In March, ETSU was awarded several grants by the Opioid Abatement Council totaling $4 million across 10 projects. These funds will enable our institution to continue its critical work in combating the opioid crisis through innovative research and community outreach. And of course, we recently celebrated one of the most joyous occasions on campus, commencement. This spring, ETSU conferred degrees to 2,028 students, with 790 of these students graduating with honors. That figure included our 100th Roan Scholar to cross the stage and receive a diploma. This year's graduating class included 125 military-affiliated students, and nearly 40% of this year's grads were the first in their families to attend college. The university was honored to have Timothy Busfield, a former ETS student and an Emmy Award-winning actor and director known for his roles in The West Wing and 30-something, as the keynote speaker. His inspiring speech highlighted the importance of perseverance and creativity in achieving success. One final note before we tackle today's business. On behalf of the entire university, I'd like to take a moment to extend our gratitude to student trustee Amir Sheikh, who's not able to attend, but we honored just a second ago in a discussion we had during lunch. His term will end June 30th. He has served as an ardent advocate for ETSU and for the student constituency he represents. We also welcome the new nominee for student trustee, Mr. Trenton White, not just Trent, but Trenton White, who happens to be the recipient of the Truman Scholarship that I mentioned earlier. Welcome, Trent, and congratulations. And thank you for all the generous giving your time and impressive talents in service to this institution and our community. With that, I will now turn to Dr. Green and ask that we take the roll.
Trustee Allen.
Here.
Trustee Ayers. Trustee DiCarlo.
Here.
Trustee Fry-Clark.
Here.
Trustee Grisham.
Here.
Trustee Ramsey.
Here.
Trustee Segal-Jones.
Here.
Trustee Shake. Trustee Treadway.
Here.
Trustee Latimer. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Dr. Green, do we have individuals who have pre-registered to speak to the board as part of the public comments portion of the agenda?
No, sir.
Hearing none, we'll move on to trustees. You will find minutes from our February meeting in your material. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any question, comments, edits, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The next item on the agenda. Earlier this morning, the Academic Research and Student Success Committee met. I now turn to Trustee Allen for an update on the committee's work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since all of you all attended the meeting, I'll be very brief. We approved the promotion and tenure of certain faculty members. We also approved the ETSU academic restructure proposal, and we heard an update on financial aid and enrollment from Dr. Levesque and an update on ETSU's research from Dr. Hagemeyer.
Thank you, Trustee Allen. Our Finance and Administrative Committee also met this morning. I'll now turn to Trustee Ramsey for an update on the committee's work, including one action item related to tuition and fees.
Thank you, Chairman DeCarlo. The Finance Administration Committee met this morning to review several items. The committee approved the spring estimated budget for fiscal year 2024 and the proposed July budget for fiscal year 2025. The budgets were reviewed and discussed in detail at the called committee meeting held in April 5th. The budget materials are included in the consent agenda on pages 24 through 26 of the board packet. The committee received a financial update which compares operating revenues and expenses from the current year to the prior year. The current report provided a comparison through March. Changes for revenues and expenditures continue to be in alignment with the October budget revisions, which were discussed and approved in our November meeting. The committee reviewed a quarterly report of agreements and contracts over $250,000 for the period from January through March 2024. The committee approved the capital budget submittals and disclosures for fiscal year 2025. The report included capital outlay projects totaling $45,900,000, capital demolition projects totaling $225,000, capital maintenance projects totaling $16,940,000, and disclosed projects of $95,650,000, which have been presented to the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. The committee reviewed proposed tuition and fees for fiscal year 2025 at our January and April meetings, as well as this morning. Christy Graham will present the proposed tuition and mandatory fees for the full board today.
Good afternoon, trustees. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I am presenting the recommended tuition and mandatory fees for 2024-25 academic year. It is essential for thoughtful and deliberate consideration about the impact prior to recommending a tuition and mandatory fee increase. We consider the level of state support. THEC's model for FY25 was built on a flat enrollment with a 4% outcomes growth and inflationary adjustment, which equated to $1.2 million. Governor Lee's proposed budget for an expenditure increase and a partially funded 3% salary pool was $5 million. We also considered the total cost of attendance. Tuition and fees increased by 2.85% in FY24. We also looked at a comparison of tuition and mandatory fees with the other state universities, which still shows ETSU close to this year's average for state universities. We're engaged in ongoing analysis of all units across the university to identify areas to improve services, reduce costs, or allow assets to be used more effectively for students. We also must consider THEC's binding tuition and mandatory fee ranges. THEC proposed a 0 to 4% tuition and mandatory fee limit at their November 2023 meeting. The commission, however, amended that and voted to approve a 0 to 5.5% binding limit at their May meeting. Other factors we consider are projected student enrollment and university enrollment goals, market and cost factors for higher education. The Higher Education Price Index shows that inflation for colleges and universities rose 4.5% for fiscal year 2023. The proposal was posted for formal comment from April 5th through April 22nd. Although no formal feedback was made, informal feedback was collected and adjustments to the proposal were made accordingly. We are proposing a 5.25% increase in the total tuition and mandatory fees for all classes of undergraduate students on the main campus, 5.36% in tuition and 4.8% in fees, for a total increase to the full-time undergraduate student of $213 per semester for tuition and $48 per semester for fees. THEC proposed a 0 to 5.5% tuition and mandatory fee increase for undergraduate students for the upcoming academic year. The tuition increases over the past 5 years have included 2 years at 0% increase. We are also recommending an additional $15 increase for new out-of-state students and a similar percentage increase for graduate tuition. Assuming flat enrollment, this should result in an increase in revenue of $5.4 million. This will help fund ETSU's portion of the salary pool of $2.2 million, an additional $1.6 million salary pool to address FLSA and other salary needs, as well as increased benefit cost, faculty tenure and promotion, and other inflationary increases. The mandatory fee increase includes a $10 increase for our Center for Professional Activity, a $4 increase for operational costs at our post office, $30 for the campus access fee, and $4 for a student activity facilities fund. Tuition for ETSU did not increase, as you can see, 2 out of the past 5 years. The overall increase requested is 5.25%. The review of tuition and fees shows that ETSU is still an affordable option for public education in the state of Tennessee. The increase of undergraduate tuition and fees to $10,472 still shows that we are just slightly higher than last year's average of state universities, with University of Tennessee Knoxville at the highest and TSU at the lowest tuition schools. We are asking today for approval of the 5.36% tuition increase and the 4.8% mandatory fee increase. Are there any questions on the tuition and fee proposal?
Thank you, Christy. With that, can we have a motion to approve the amended proposed tuition increase and mandatory fees for 2024-2025 of 5.25% in accordance with the governor's budget and TX binding tuition limit? Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd just like to say that this was brought on by unfunded information from the FSLA by the federal government. Had nothing to do with the state of Tennessee, but it's being pushed on us and eventually to the students' backs. But overall, the good news is, if you look at us over the past 5 years, we've had less than a 2% increase per year. Trustee Allen brought that up, and I think we're still a good value as far as education, what they get.
Thank you. I have a second. No, any other additional discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Trustee Ramsey. And finally, I turn to Trustee Segal Jones to provide an update on the audit committee's work.
Okay, we had several items to review this morning. Charters and policies, I'll read those really quick just to get those in the record. The audit committee charter, internal audit charter, compliance charter, the internal audit policy, preventing and reporting fraud, waste, and abuse policy, conflict of interest policy, and employee code of conduct policy. We had no suggested changes to those policies at this time. They will be reviewed again annually, and Ms. Lewis mentioned that artificial intelligence, AI, will need to be added soon to those policies, and we'll take care of that at that time. She reported on the audits that were completed since we met last in February, and that was an annual audit that has to occur for their financial statements, WETS FM radio, that received an unqualified opinion. The executive level audit this year, we rotate those. It's chose at random, so there's a little element of surprise to that, but that was Karen King in the information office, and that found no findings or recommendations. There was also a review of the ticket office within athletics, and it also had no findings and review. And I commend all those staff people and the cooperation of them to be audited. Nobody likes to be audited, but they do a great job of helping the internal audit team get those procedures completed. We also, she gave a status of the recommendations log, and the only action item we had was to add 3 instances of potential fraud, waste, and abuse, and to delete the Northeast Tennessee Community Health Center's audit from their audit plan to coincide with the postponement, because of the postponement of Voyager. We'll look at it at that time. It would be more useful of their time. And then Ms. Graham reviewed the annual audited financial statements from the Comptroller of the Treasury, in which she reported that we are in good financial condition and that we received an unqualified opinion on that audit. That's my report.
Thank you, Trustee Segal Jones. Consent agenda is the next item. As noted in the material in your agenda, you will find several routine items, including items acted upon during this morning's committee meetings, included in the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members would like to pull for discussion, consideration by the full board?
I'll state, in the light of the action the board took to amend and approve a 5.25% tuition and mandatory fee increase, I'd like to make the following amended motion for the board consideration. I move that the Board of Trustees amend the Finance and Administration Committee's proposal approved during its April 5th meeting, April 5th called meeting, and adopt the following resolution. My amendment is this: the proposed total salary pool of 4% for 2024-25 are approved and presented as the meeting materials that are in front of you. We do have a motion. We just make that.
Yep. Do we have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you so much for that. Now, I'm going to move on to a motion for the full consent agenda. So with that, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we're moving on. Okay. So next we will hear from Dr. Bill Block and Dr. Linville, who will provide an update on the Quillen College of Medicine.
Chairman DiCarlo, trustees, President Nolan, thank you very much for the opportunity to present on the Quillen College of Medicine 50-year legacy today. I would like to thank Dr. Linville for his help with the slides. Any errors are his fault, and anything that's good is my responsibility, so as that works. Back in 1972, President Nixon signed the Teague-Cranston Act, which allowed for the formation of 8 medical schools partnered with VA hospitals across the country. That created a great deal of excitement here in the state with the opportunity for ETSU to partner with our VA Medical Center and create a medical school. There was a great deal of local support to create the Quillen College of Medicine, led by Congressman Quillen, President Culp at the time, John Lamb, who is the Dean of Health, and all the way down to our local physicians and Dr. Charles Allen, a prominent local physician that helped to really lead the effort to bring medical education here to Northeast Tennessee. Our local delegation and the other senators and representatives in Nashville were convinced that this was a good idea and passed that legislation 50 years ago on Valentine's Day, and subsequently was vetoed by Governor Dunn at the time, and resulted in one of the biggest fights that's occurred apparently in Nashville with the overturn of that veto and subsequent legislation overridden in March 12th of '74 that allowed for the formation of the Quillen College of Medicine under the guidance of ETSU, and over a proposal that would have had shared guidance from UT and ETSU at the time. Created a lot of good newspaper press, and hopefully these are included in your packet and you're able to blow them up and read them. Colorful articles that really highlight an interesting time in Nashville and how the legislature used to work. Really created a lot of goodwill for the area up here, and because the local delegates, in addition to the local community, as we saw with the foundation of the Gatton College of Pharmacy, everyone pulled together to make sure that this was a possibility to really impact the region and to bring an expansion of healthcare to Northeast Tennessee and Johnson City. Since that time, we've graduated just shy of 2,500 graduates from the Quillen College of Medicine. So that's 43 graduating classes, 2,475 graduates. About 1,000 of those physicians practice here in the local region. And so if you can imagine what the healthcare in the Tri-Cities would look like without those 1,000 graduates practicing locally, and another close to 1,000 that practice really within Tennessee or within the surrounding states. A picture of our inaugural class. It was a little smaller and had a few more mustaches than we tend to see today, but excellent group of physicians, and there's their composite picture. You may recognize a fair number of them that practiced here in the area. We're now part of the ETSU Academic Health Sciences Center, and one of the 5 colleges that make up that conglomeration of people. We have a great collaboration with the other deans, and really an ongoing collaboration in the clinical area that's allowed us to improve care for the region. The mission of the Quillen College of Medicine is still true today, and the primary mission is to educate future physicians with an interest in primary and rural care to practice in underserved communities. We're committed to excellence in biomedical research and dedicated to improve the healthcare in Northeast Tennessee and the surrounding Appalachian region. How are we doing at that mission? Well, each year the AAMC presents a mission management tool back to our colleges, and we look forward to reviewing that. And we're in the above the 90th percentile for schools with graduates practicing in primary care. I attribute that really to our excellent faculty in these areas. The students get here with an idea that they might want to practice rural primary care, and they see our faculty in family medicine, internal medicine, pediatrics, and obstetrics practicing that on a day-to-day basis, and they see those as mentors and as role models that they want to emulate, and allows them to go on and pursue careers in these fields. We have over 3,800 applicants every year to fill 78 seats at the College of Medicine. So we really have the ability to choose from a top-tier group of people and are really proud of the students that we attract. U.S. News and World Report says us ranked number 9 in the country for medical schools with the most graduates practicing in medically underserved areas. So that's a federal designation of areas that are lacking the health care that they need, and our students are really drawn to help fulfill that need and to take care of the patients that are out in our rural communities. We're at the 96th percentile of medical schools for students that participate in military service after they graduate. We're really second in our percentage of accepting veterans, behind only the Uniform Health Sciences Center in Bethesda. And so we're very proud of attracting those students. We think we offer them an excellent education, and many of them go on to serve again after they've been in medical school. We promoted 4 students just prior to graduation a couple weeks ago. back to being captains. One of them had been a major as a B-1 bomber with close to 500 combat hours flying his aircraft before he gave up that commission to come back to medical school and become a physician. And it speaks to really the quality of the students that we're attracting. We also are very proud of the service that we provide to the local community. We have over 370,000 patient visits every year that come through our family medicine and MEAC clinics and through the ETSU Health service line. We provide over $3 million in uncompensated care every year, really care that otherwise these patients would not have access to. We're the largest provider of Medicaid services for the Tri-Cities region, and we're very proud of being able to fulfill that need in the community. We have 78 medical students a year, about 40 PhD candidates in the biomedical sciences. We have 240 resident physicians that are graduated medical school and are pursuing their specialty or subspecialty training at our facilities and with the help of Ballot in the VA. And we have about 250 faculty across the College of Medicine. As all of you know, we've partnered more closely with Ballot Health over the past couple of years and signed a new master affiliation agreement last July. Really looking to increase the educational opportunity for all of the health sciences across ETSU, enhancing those clinical partnerships that we have with Ballot, developing more joint research, and working really strategically to help plan the workforce for the region for the future needs of the community. We provide the exclusive coverage for the neonatal intensive care unit, the pediatric intensive care unit at Niswonger Children's Hospital. We provide all of the trauma surgeons to the Johnson City Medical Center, cover all of the surgical intensive care unit. We have faculty staffing at the Regional Cancer Center here in Johnson City. We provide the staff for the St. Jude affiliate at Niswonger Hospital. The perinatal center obstetrical care is covered 24/7 by our obstetricians here at the medical center. We also staff for orthopedic trauma, all of the plastic surgery call for the trauma center, and all of the pediatric surgery, just to mention a few of the service lines that really we're able to provide physicians in concert with Ballot or the VA to increase the level of care that's available to a town of this size. What do we hope to do for the next 50 years? We hope to continue to strengthen and pursue the same mission that we've had for the last 50. We're looking forward to construction of an integrated health sciences building that'll occur on campus, hopefully with groundbreaking before the end of the year. It's going to be based on a team care approach and really will provide the next level of service to the region that we aren't really able to access at this point because none of our practices are able to deliver it in the current buildings that we have, and that goes not just for ETSU Health, but for all of the practices here in the region. So this will be state-of-the-art care with a team approach. The learners from all of the 5 health sciences colleges will be able to participate in that care and really learn up-to-date model of care delivery prior to going out to their jobs as they graduate. And we hope to also enhance our underserved medicine. We've really redone our underserved medicine rotation for all of our medical students over the past couple of years. They serve Southwest Virginia, Northeast Tennessee, all the way down to Sevierville. But we've also added fellowships in global surgery. We have a surgeon stationed full-time in Zambia in a hospital that provides rural care, helping to enhance capacity at that facility and to train their surgeons. As of July, we'll have a second surgeon that's finished their residency that will be stationed in Kenya for 1 to 2 years. And so both presence in both Zambia and Kenya. Those programs allow our students and residents to go over and train with those surgeons for a month or so at a time during the year and really experience another aspect of underserved care across the globe and to see what we're able to do to impact that care. We also have trips that go regularly to a partner in Belize and are looking to see how do we bring primary care to those facilities that we partner with around the globe to be able to train our resident physicians, our faculty, and our students in the next level of that. So Clinically here at home, we're continuing to strive to be the practice of choice. If you get sick in the community, we want you to seek out an ETSU health provider, as knowing that that's going to be the best service you're going to be able to gain, and also it's going to be the highest level of academic medicine that's available across the country. We're going to continue to enhance our partnerships with both the VA and the Ballot Health System, and to grow those partnerships into providing what we need for the region. But we want to focus on quality and service and make sure that we elevate what we're offering in the clinics, but that we're also helping to elevate what's available in our community partners. And we're going to continue to strive to really provide the workforce for the future. That means expanding our graduate medical education programs and being able to start programs in specialties where we see deficits in the Tri-Cities and where we have problems recruiting, but also to expand our class size. If we're able to maintain 1,000 of our 2,400 graduates in the Tri-Cities, we would have much more impact if we're able to increase the number of graduates we have coming through and continue to have those folks train in our graduate medical education programs, or to come back if they've trained elsewhere and serve on faculty or serve with our local practices. So we look forward to really enhancing what we've been able to do for the prior 50 years for the next 50. And it can't really go without being said enough. Thank you to those people who had the vision to be able to start a medical school in Johnson City. They did so against great odds. They continued to support it once it had gotten started, and they've passed that legacy on to a level of support that continues today, not only from the trustees, but from the local providers, from the healthcare system that's put their trust in us by partnering with us, and from a VA hospital that we have a great relationship with. And so we really can't do it without the support of our partners, our patients, and the wonderful support that we get here at the university. Like to end it with the quote, "Teamwork makes the dream work." From those of you that know Dr. Tom Quasagro, he is one of our original faculty members and continues to teach anatomy and lead our anatomy program at the College of Medicine. He's also one of our biggest basketball and football fans here at the university. And he loves to tell everyone about teamwork making the dream work. And I think this is a prime example of where nothing could be more true. So I'm happy to take any questions and appreciate the opportunity to update everyone on how we're doing.
I just want to thank you for all you do. I couldn't guess how many hours a week you probably work, but we do appreciate all you do in this region.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it, all of your support.
With that, I'd like to ask Dr. Nolan to provide his presence update to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, for the opportunity to provide this report to you. During the course of my presentation, I'll touch on the following themes. I'll give an update on where we are with respect to access and success metrics. We'll talk a little bit about our current state of the budget. We'll provide a review on the legislative session. We'll talk some about the changes that are occurring across the landscape of intercollegiate athletics. And then we'll do a little bit of reflection on the year that was. But it wouldn't be appropriate to have a presentation if I didn't have this slide, because this slide is the reason why we're here. More than 110 years ago, our founding president stood in front of Gilbert Hall and provided the mission to this institution, and that's a mission to improve the quality of life for the people of the region, a mission to serve, a mission to make a difference. And that mission was reflected in the presentation that Dr. Block just provided. You know, it's hard to think 50 years ago this community stepped forward, pushed back against all of the opposition from other public universities in the state of Tennessee, and created a med school. But not a med school like other med schools, but a med school rooted in this mission. 1,000 physicians in our region graduated from Quillen. 1,000 physicians in this region living forward a mission that was created more than 110 years ago at the founding of the university. So as we look at access for the fall, earlier this morning you had a presentation from Dr. Heather Levesque that outlined the impact of the FAFSA challenges on our university. And it's hard for me to comprehend that one form, one interface between students, taxes, and colleges could create such consternation, but it has. As you heard earlier this morning, usually financial aid packages would be provided to our students in January. This year, our students were not receiving aid award letters until May. And as we look at the activity that has transpired here, one of the things that I'm proud of is the outreach work that they've done, the phone calls, the text messages, the handwritten notes. We may be down a little bit in freshmen as of this date, but as you heard in Dr. Levesque's comments, we're beginning to close and make up for lost time. The lost time that we can't make up for is reflected in the following chart. If you'll recall, in the presentation this morning, you heard information that Tennessee led the nation in FAFSA completions. That's good news. The bad news is less than 50% of this year's high school seniors have completed the FAFSA, and that number's not consistent by race or by income. Less than 23% of low-income students have completed the FAFSA. Less than 23%. Those are the students that are going to benefit from Pell. So as you move through the summer and as you see things that are happening across college enrollment in the fall, just think about this class, because these high school seniors began their high school journey with COVID, and now they're coming out of it with FAFSA. So just a lot to put into context as we're looking at the numbers around college-going rates. These are the college-going rates in Tennessee. I remind this information to you from a data provision perspective, just to also remind you of the intervention work that we're doing in the P20 space. We're continuing to meet regularly with high school principals and superintendents around deepening connections with our secondary partners. We've begun the process of building a data infrastructure that will provide information around where students are going to college and what happens to them after they graduate. But these are college-going rates prior to the FAFSA challenges, and it'll be interesting to see what this data looks like in the fall. It's important to recognize that going to college is more than going to college. There's real public and private benefits that accrue to students from investments in education. And we talk about this a lot in terms of earnings, but I wanted to provide you with data on that earnings lens within Tennessee. So for Tennesseans who did not finish high school, their earnings average is about where it is in the United States. But look at that wage differential as you move from high school to some college, but no degree, to associates, to bachelor's, to graduate and professional. That's Tennessee data. So you can see the direct return on an investment in annual earnings as educational attainment increases. And then you see it on the other side of the labor pattern from an unemployment perspective. So despite all of the noise in the general public about returns on a degree and should students still be looking at post-secondary education, just simply from an earnings perspective alone, the best investment a family can make is an investment in their children's educational future. But it's more than just about earnings. As educational attainment increases, so does life expectancy. College graduates live 8.5 years longer than those who did not graduate from college. So that's the public and the private benefits of post-secondary education. So now let's switch a little bit and look at us. There's a lot that goes into an enrollment projection. We talk a great deal about the size of the incoming freshman class, and we project we'll have 2,100 freshmen this fall. But our retention rates also are a leading indicator of what next fall's enrollment will look like. And you can see our fall to spring persistence has begun to pick back up after the COVID downturn. And as a result, here's where we project enrollment to be this fall. So based upon our retention information, based upon our persistence information, based upon applications, this is the material that Dr. Hoff and Dr. Chappell have provided. And you see that we project to be up about 150 or so students in certain sectors, 218 overall. This will be the first time we project to cross the 14,000 student threshold since pre-COVID. So I'm confident with where we are as it relates to our budget information that you took action on earlier. Now I want to talk a little bit about strategic initiatives that are underway across the campus. But I want to put what's happening on our campus within the context of what's happening across the country. Each year in the spring, surveys released from Inside Higher Education that provides information about what presidents thought was happening across their campus. And one of the points here that's interesting for me is about 53%, it's the third element down, of presidents noted that, candidly, they felt their college had far too many programs and they needed to look at that distribution of academic programming and the manner in which their universities were structured. Well, what did you all approve today? The first holistic restructure academically of this institution since the late 1970s. So the presidents are thinking this is something that they need to start thinking about. This board took action on it today. So forward thinking, forward focused, that's the way we're trying to approach issues. And these are some of the things that we have undertaken either this year or on the horizon for completion in the coming fall. We'll now begin the process of implementing the new academic structure. Directly related to that implementation is the resetting of a university budget. As programs move, we have to ensure that the college budgets that they're moving into are properly centered and properly based. Christy Graham is leading that work over the course of the summer. There's a lot that's happening from a facilities perspective. As you heard Laura Bailey earlier today, there's not only projects that are in the queue, but if you were to walk across campus, you can see where the academic building is coming, projects that are underway. But it's more than new buildings. Burleson Hall is being renovated. Residence halls are under renovation, and we'll begin the process of preparing for the Brown Hall renovation this summer, as we'll start to move some faculty from Brown Hall into space that we're leasing downtown, the old Northeast State space. We heard a lot over the course of today, particularly in the Finance Committee, about the impact of the Fair Labor Standards Act. As Trustee Treadway noted, this is a federal mandate that's being imposed upon the institution. There's a significant cost associated with it, and we'll track this as we move through the year in the two-phased implementation in July and then potentially in January. We continue to move forward with the implementation of our Voyager system, moving from Banner to Oracle, but we want to do so in a prudent and appropriate manner. And then finally, we're looking at the way in which we allocate resources across the institution. So a high-level overview of some of the many activities that your staff is engaged in. But a little bit of a deep dive on this. And I know we walked through it this morning, but I thank you for allowing me to touch upon some of the work that's occurring in the restructure area again, because that work traces its roots back to your strategic plan. In 2022, this board approved an update to the work of the Committee for 125. And one of the initiatives that you stated for us to embark upon was updating our academic portfolio. Over the course of the past 2 years, under the Provost's leadership, we've been engaged in this body of work. And here's what that new academic structure is going to do. First and foremost, it's going to strengthen the health sciences. It will take programs that were distributed across multiple colleges and bring them up into a College of Health Sciences. But another thing that it will do is allow us through the continuing studies unit to really focus on those individuals in our community with some college but no degree, to outreach to business and industry, to replicate the Blue Sky initiative here in the Tri-Cities. But this academic structure, if it serves the institution as well as the last time we went through this under President DeRosier, I think it is a job well done. And it's a job that our region and our state needs. We've got a 3.5% gap in the labor supply. Why are we creating a STEM school? Because we need more STEM graduates. And there's a labor workforce shortage of more than 600,000 new jobs in the state of Tennessee between now and the end of the decade. Many of them are high skilled in the tech areas, from surveying and mapping all the way into the work that'll emerge in mechatronics on down the line. So we've aligned our academic portfolio to meet, hopefully, the growth needs within the state of Tennessee. Earlier today, you took action on the university's budget. This is our budget as of the current moment. You run a $470 million enterprise. You've got 2,600 faculty and staff. The bulk of those resources come from tuition and fees, but I want to note that percentage on state appropriations. If I was standing in front of you a decade ago, that number would have been in the upper 30s. The state of Tennessee has been very generous in support for post-secondary education, and we've benefited from that. And I think as we look at what makes our institution and our story different from that in other states, it's that we've got a solid growth model led by Dr. Sherlin and his enrollment management team, but we've also had solid support operationally from the state. And as you heard Ms. Graham present today on the CFI, the composite financial index of this institution has doubled in its performance over last year, a 6. The industry standard is a 3. The watch level is a 1. I've had the honor to serve as president for 12 years, and at no point in the past 12 years have we been in as solid financial shape as we are at the present moment. I referenced the state support. Here you see what came through the General Assembly this year. Modest increases in comparison to prior years. The bulk of the increases are in salary. And here's where we are from a capital perspective. Many board members have asked me questions about Brown Hall, wanting to know what happened with capital this year. As you can see on this chart, only one institution in the state of Tennessee received capital funding, and that was the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. There were no capital projects funded for state higher education this year. But as you see in Brown Hall, we're in a fortunate position in that half of that building has already been funded. So we'll come back before the General Assembly next year. This is the project that you approved earlier this morning in Finance to resubmit our request for the second half of funding for Brown. But that's a very different look of what capital is in the state than it has been in the past. From a facilities perspective, and I touched on some of this, but I want to reference the Commons. That's the connection between here and the football stadium. Hopefully, if we hit timelines, by the opening game, that space will be complete. And by the time North Dakota State comes to town in the middle of September, that really should be a beautiful space for families to connect across the campus and to connect in advance of that celebratory moment when who knows what will happen when we take on North Dakota State. Don't want to put that pressure on the coach just yet because he's still new. But planning, Trustee Allen asked the question earlier today about the Greek Village. That is in the Strategic Facilities Master Plan that this board will take action on in September. Once the board takes action on that Strategic Facilities Master Plan, then these projects will begin to move. Projects including a Greek Village, as well as the location for projects such as the building that Dr. Block mentioned, the Integrated Health Sciences location. I mentioned earlier the federal mandate around Fair Labor Standards Act. Just a little bit of granularity here, and this is particularly for our employees who may be watching this board proceeding. Presently, the FSLA threshold for an individual to be classified as exempt is slightly over $35,000. Effective July 1, in order for those employees to continue to be in an exempt status, we'll have to move their pay to $43,888. I'd like to thank the board for the action that you took both on fees as well as on the salary pool, because by the establishment of that expanded salary pool, that provides us with resources to address the first gate in the FSLA process. We'll put in place a comprehensive review regarding the manner in which we'll approach the second gate, but I'd like to give clarification and assurances to the board that every penny of the resources that were positioned through that tuition and fee increase will go towards faculty and staff salaries. In the event that the second gate here is not actualized, we will still invest in salaries because, as you'll see shortly, we still have a significant room to go to close gaps with peers. As it relates to Voyager, I want to thank Dr. Karen King, Christy Graham, and Lori Erickson and their staffs, not just the three of them, but the army of staff behind them who has been doing yeoman's work to position the institution to be ready to go live. While it is difficult to conceptualize that we're not in a position to go live, we've paused. But we've paused for the following reason. We want to get it right rather than getting it fast. We work with the Banner system that was developed more than 2.5 decades ago at the Tennessee Board of Regents. And every single person who works at this institution labors with the complexity of a system that probably wasn't implemented in as seamless of a way as it should have been. And we want to ensure that the next generation of employee at this institution isn't labored by errors that we made in haste. So by pausing go live, that provides us with an opportunity to do a comprehensive assessment of our readiness, as well as to go back and correct areas for which we may have existing deficiencies. So I thank the campus for their patience as we move through this process, and I thank staff in HR, Facilities, Finance, and OIT for the due diligence that they're going to conduct on the health check, as well as for the remediations that come on the back end of the health check. And I'm not ready to stand before the board and give you a future go-live date because we've got to get this right. And once we have a sense of the definition of right, then we'll come back and talk about a go-live date. I do want to remind our employees that the funds that this board set aside to provide a $500 one-time transition bonus as we move from 12 to 26 pay periods will still be provided. It just will not be provided until we go live. Talked some at the last board meeting about work that we're doing to provide a comprehensive assessment and restructure of classification and compensation of staff at this institution. That work was paused in the spring to focus all of our work on preparing to go live for Voyager. This work will pick up over the summer, and what I'm sharing with you are just some examples of what new job families could look like. But as we move through the fall and we approach the start of the year, this will be a significant lift on behalf of HR to implement a new classification and compensation structure for the university. I referenced earlier the work that we're doing with our budget model work. This is ensuring that the base budgets for those newly structured colleges are set appropriately, and that we also look forward at the manner in which we incentivize colleges for growth, we reward people for performance, and we structure the operations of the university. And we'll keep the board informed as we move through the year about our work to reposition our internal budget model. And why is all of this important? It's important because we've got to move these numbers. This is our ranking in faculty salaries in comparison to peers, and we're not where we need to be. So every action that we take from a budget perspective, every action that we take from an efficiencies perspective, we've got to focus those resources on moving these numbers, because as Trustee Grisham stated earlier today, the most important asset we have is our human capital asset. And as we look at faculty salaries and staff salaries, this isn't an us versus them. It's not an institution where our staff is well compensated and our faculty are undercompensated. Everybody's in the same boat. So as we move through the year, this is our focus. Our focus is creating opportunities to make investments in faculty and staff salaries and to restructure through a class and compensation revision the manner in which staff salaries are allocated. Legislative update. It was a pretty active session, but it was a session that at the end, there wasn't a lot to show for it. It was a session in which there were investments made in our institutions. Probably the most important thing that happened this session from my perspective was the formal and final recognition of the Gatton College of Pharmacy as a non-formal unit. Last year, Governor Lee provided funding for Gatton, but there was a little bit of confusion about whether or not it was formally established as a budget unit. That was remedied this session, and in a supplemental appropriation, the salary enhancements and inflationary for Gatton were added on top of the 2.5. And then moving forward in perpetuity, Gatton will be recognized as a non-formula unit. We still have deeper investments that are required from the state in Gatton. As you recall, what this allowed us to do is to make one step towards equalizing our tuition and fees with that against the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And we will come back to THEC in the General Assembly again next year with the request for the rest of the funding that will allow us to equalize tuition and fees. So next shift, we've talked a little bit about things that are happening at the university. We've talked about finance. We've talked about things that are happening from a labor perspective. Now let's talk about a changing labor landscape, and that's the labor landscape in intercollegiate athletics. Within the coming week, and you've seen some coverage in this in the press, about the House, Hubbard, and Carter cases, which are lawsuits that the NCAA is seeking to settle that relates to the compensation of student athletes. All of what we know about college athletics has the potential to change, and change quickly in the coming weeks and in the coming months. The impact of the House resolution, if it does come to closure, is that it releases the NCAA from forward-looking antitrust claims, and it ensures that student athletes have the opportunity to receive benefits in a backwards way and in a forwards way for their name, image, and likeness. What it means for East Tennessee State University is that in terms of the revenue that we receive passed through our conference from the NCAA and their revenue distribution will be reduced $2.9 million over the next decade, which results in about a $290,000 reduction to our athletic department's annual operating budget. But that's not the real impact. The real impact is the changes that this makes to the ability of institutions to operate NIL, to revenue sharing at the Power 5 level, but also to the manner in which scholarships and equivalencies are reset. At the present moment, Coach Panucci and our men's baseball team is down in Greenville now competing in the Southern Conference Tournament, has 11.7 equivalencies for his baseball team. If they move to a scholarship and roster limit, that number moves to 32. So for those of you who have student athletes on teams with equivalencies, in the future, they're going to go to roster limits, which means the cost of running those programs becomes exponentially more expensive. So as a board, we will bring back to you, once this case is settled, it's not settled now, so I'm not asking you for action, I'm just giving you visibility that in the year to come, we will probably spend some time with you focused on college athletics, and the home of that discussion is in the academic committee. So in that academic committee, there'll be some information around new program starts and how this House settlement impacts our institution. So now let's pull up a little bit. We as a university have a strategic plan that's focused on elements of access, success, and impact. And this is the part of my presentation where I just want to have some fun and do some myth busting. I'm not a very fun person. My family tells me I'm boring. Some wonder if I sleep in this ridiculous tie. But this is my attempt to do a little bit of humor. If you were to read the headlines are that the cost of college has exploded. But inflation adjustment, the cost of college has declined 2.5% to 4% since annual year 19. The headline is students are increasingly basing their decisions on cost. But if you look back from 19 to 20, those institutions that saw enrollment declines were the lowest cost institutions. The headline says that college education equates to lifelong debt. Less than half the students who shook my hand 2 weeks ago had any debt at all, and their average debt burden was $19,000, which is $2,000 less than it was 5 years ago. So the number of students who graduate from this institution with debt is declining, and that debt is below the national average. Talk about the return on investment, it's not there anymore. I've already shown you the Tennessee charts that dispels that. And then the point that degree holders aren't any better off. I've already shown you slides that show that that's not the case. So why am I providing this information to you? Because as board members, we need you to help tell the story of this institution. The headlines in the newspaper are not the headlines at this institution. This is an institution where 40% of our students are first generation, a significant proportion are Pell, and they're moving into jobs in this region to improve the quality of life for the people of the region. So just a little bit of fun on perception doesn't equal reality. Here you see our debt slide that I mentioned earlier. So now I want to set a little bit again of context. As you look at the priorities that shape higher education, public perceptions, enrollment, business models, artificial intelligence, student readiness, and well-being, once again, what are presidents worried about? A lot of the things that presidents right now are worried about is the opportunity for their campus to foster an environment in which free speech is protected and promoted. And we as an institution are working hard to ensure that we create an environment where all students have the opportunity to realize their future and realize their dreams. So as we reflect back on 23-24, a couple points that I want to note. I want to remind you again, in December, that this campus had a 10-year reaffirmation by SACS, no findings, no recommendations. That seems like eons ago, but it was during this academic year. Trustee DiCarlo, in his opening comments, referenced the NAPLEX pass rate. #1 in the state of Tennessee, #2 in the nation. Little old Gatton College of Pharmacy, who up to last year the state wouldn't even fund, had the second highest pass rate in the nation on the NAPLEX exam. Our College of Nursing had a 90% pass rate on the NCLEX, and our Q1 score was 97%. We set a record for freshman enrollment this past fall, which broke the record that we set the fall before, and we may just set another record in the fall. I don't know because FAFSA was throwing us for a loop, but it wasn't for FAFSA, I'd feel much more confident. Our housing is at record capacity. 3,400 students will live on campus this fall. That's the highest number in the history of the university. But it's more than these points of celebration. I want to give you a little bit of a side story from here, and then I'll hit to the final slide. I'd shared with you at a prior board meeting the story of a young man who several years ago at the freshman convocation in Brooks Gym was overwhelmed by the stimuli in that environment and was removed from the setting. I then told the story of this young man again as he stepped out on stage at the Martin Center and performed a song from one of his heroes as his hero stood in the wings. For me, one of the great successes of this spring was the opportunity to be in this building at a private commencement ceremony to shake this young man's hand and to see a young man who is part of our Access ETSU program blossom and grow and develop. So we can get caught up on pass rates and sacks and all that other type of stuff. But ultimately, what really matters about this institution is the people and the impact that we have on people that many institutions would never give a chance to, students such as the participants in our Access ETSU program. But let's close with this moment of celebration. Men's tennis, men's golf, women's golf, all won Southern Conference championships. Your men's golf program, as we speak, is in Carlsbad, California for the 4th consecutive year competing for the national championship. Not many schools can say that, but we can say that here at ETSU. So I want to thank this board for the faith that you've placed in our staff. Thank you for recognizing the need for us to pause Voyager, even though there may be a financial cost associated with it. Thank you for the difficult decisions that you made to establish an enhanced salary pool, thereby allowing us to make investments in our faculty and staff. And with that, Mr. Chair, that brings my presentation to a close, but I'd be happy to take any questions from the board on these or other topics.
Right. Any questions, comments for Dr. Nolan? Looks like
Chair,
you're all free.
I think the next 2 items are mine, so I
They
may
are.
just stay here, but I'll move off of this so they can get us to wherever it is we need to go. As we're waiting for the slides to catch up, I do want to take a moment to recognize someone. Our new student body president is with us, Hunter Turgeon. Hunter, thank you for taking the time to spend your Friday with us. Hunter is moving into the seat that was vacated by someone we're going to talk about here in a minute, and will be leaving Johnson City, I think this weekend, to head to Denver for a summer-long internship. But thank you for taking the time, for being here with us, and look forward to working with you. So the next item on the agenda, Mr. Chair, is a resolution of appreciation for Mr. Amir Sheikh. Trustee Sheikh is unable to be with us today. He has a personal conflict this afternoon, but we had the opportunity to recognize Amir for his service to the board over lunch. There's a formal resolution within the agenda. I cannot move the motion because I did that once and that got me in trouble with the state auditors. So I will now turn it back to you for the appropriate motion.
Do I have a motion to move forward with this resolution? Second? All those in favor, or I'm sorry, comments, edits, or discussions?
I'd just like to say this. Amir was a very engaging person, quietly, but he had questions to ask, and he'd say, should I ask this? And I'd say, Amir, it's okay. So, y'all, he is a vibrant person that will be an excellent surgeon. So I'm glad that we are commending him today.
So with that, we have to vote in favor. All in favor?
Mr. Chair, the next item and final item on the agenda is another action item. It is an item to approve the student trustee to the Board of Trustees for the 24-25 academic year. You see a write-up on this individual within your agenda materials, but I want to move away from that write-up to provide some context on the individual that the students have brought forward for your consideration as the new student trustee. This individual is unable to be with us today because he is going through his onboarding process for the Truman Scholarship. I am presenting Mr. Trenton, otherwise known as Trent White, for your consideration to become the new student member of the Board of Trustees. Trent is a first-generation college student from Unicoi County. He is a Roan Scholar. He's a political science major. He's active in our mock trial program. But more importantly, he is just a solid, outstanding young man. In this position, some days you have some fun and other days are other days. But there was a day this spring when many folks in this room were here when we had some fun. And I want to thank Trustee Stegall-Jones for being a part of that day. But I had brought Trent into the office to go through trustee onboarding. We were going to talk about issues facing the board, and we had this whole setup prepared. And he's waiting in my office for me, and we came in and surprised him to let him know that he had been selected as a Truman Scholar. He had no knowledge at all. And it was really wonderful to see the sense of disbelief on his face, because he couldn't quite wrap his brain around the fact that we were telling him he was a Truman Scholar. And, we joked for a little bit, and then finally I said, Trent, we got to get to work. You got to figure out what it means to be a trustee. So I want to take you into the president's conference room, because on the video screen, we had PowerPoint slides that were loaded up that I was going to walk him through. So he's gathering his composure, and we leave to go into the room. And then when we walk into the conference room, there's a room full of people there to surprise him. And to see a young man humble, maybe shedding a tear at that moment, was something that I won't forget. But I also won't forget everybody in the room who was shedding tears. But the real element of this for me is important is the conversation that I had later that night with his mom and his dad, who were on campus for an event. And for his mother and his father to talk about the impact that people in this room have had on him, their mentorship, their guidance, the way in which they've taken someone who came to an institution not knowing what would be presented there and put him in a position to receive a Truman Scholarship. And there are two scholarships that mean something. There's the Rhodes and there's the Truman. And if you look at the Truman recognees for this year, there's Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Dartmouth and Stanford and Vanderbilt, and there's us. And what's important for me, and this is where I wrap this up, and then I'm going to let you all vote because I've talked too much, but I got the stool, so I might as well stay on it for a minute longer, is there's nothing that offends me more than when people say ETSU can't do that because that's just that little old regional institution. What Trent Wright showed is that our students are as good as any student in the world, just as our faculty are and just as this institution is. So it is my honor to submit to you the recommendation for Mr. Trent White to serve on the Board of Trustees for the 24-25 academic year.
I'm going to take this one because I know Trent. I enthusiastically make the motion that we approve Trent as our student trustee.
Second. All others, any comments or questions?
I just want to say, I was in that room. It's like he said, some days. I met him as a senior in high school when he came on campus to interview for the Roan Scholar. And I knew then, we all knew in the room that he was special. They're all special, but we knew he was special. He started out, he was an Air Scholar at Unicoi. I don't know, mention that, but I've had the opportunity to watch him grow, and I just can't imagine what he's going to do. I was so proud. I was standing in that room, and I remember I might have been standing beside Kimberly, and I said, I wonder if he's a screamer or a crier. Well, he's a crier, and I'm a crier. I was one of them that was crying. I've never seen Scott Jeffers cry. He was crying. And I met his parents. It was a Roan event, and his dad, this is the stuff. This is what's important. But his dad said, I don't know where he gets it. And I said, I do. He said, I'm just not that smart. And I said, but I know where he gets it from you two, from his mom and his dad. So, he's special. I just cannot believe he's not here, though. I'm so sad he's not here.
But we can see anything we want because he's watching. He's probably red-faced right now.
Yeah. Well, he's crying, maybe. But anyway, and I'll stop there.
And with that, we have to vote in favor. Those in favor? Aye. I'm not asking opposed. Is there any other business to come before the board? Since there's no need for the board to convene an executive session today, I will ask Governor Ramsey for a motion to adjourn the Board of Trustees.
I move we adjourn.
Second. Thank you so much. We stand adjourned.